Hello everyone. Welcome to Talks with Dr. Gupta and friends. Today, I want to look at America inside out. On the inside, crony capitalism, generational fracture, and an economy quietly at war with itself. On the outside, exceptionalism, strategic ambition, and a new blueprint for global dominance. At first glance, these seem like two separate stories. They're not. They are deeply, structurally connected. Let's begin. Professor Scott Galloway has a blunt diagnosis. He says the United States is in the middle of an economic civil war. Not a violent one, but a quiet, relentless conflict between generations and classes. One that's tearing the country apart from the inside. At the center of this conflict is what he calls the Great Wealth Transfer. A decade-long systemic shift of economic power, moving steadily from the young to the old. Here's the number that stops you cold. The average 25-year-old today is 24% less wealthy than a 25-year-old was 40 years ago. Let that sink in. The foundational American promise that each generation will do better than the last has quietly collapsed for millions. Now look at the other side. Over the same period, the average 70-year-old has become 72% wealthier. So this isn't shared hardship, it's widening division. Professor Galloway argues this divide wasn't accidental. It was engineered through two levers: government spending and tax policy. Roughly 40% of federal spending is a direct transfer to seniors. Meanwhile, investments in the future, education, child support, family assistance, occupy a much smaller slice. Then there's the tax code. Seniors' wealth is taxed gently. Young work is taxed aggressively. Assets, stocks, property, capital gains, largely owned by older Americans, enjoy preferential treatment. Wages, especially for younger workers, do not. And finally, there's cronyism, a system where success depends less on innovation and more on access, where government protects incumbents and quietly blocks new entrants. Professor Galloway's line is brutal and accurate. Capitalism on the way up, socialism on the way down. When large corporations fail, they're rescued. But if individuals fail, they're told to try harder. The natural cycle of creative destruction, where old firms die and new ones rise, is broken. This is American on the inside, not let's consider America on the outside. A fractured economy. A generational Cold War. How does a country fighting an economic war at home act on the world stage? Ben Norton and Danny Haiphong explain. In their geopolitical economy report, the answer is not retreat, but retooling. The United States isn't stepping back from global leadership. It's recalibrating for a long contest. The core assumption in Washington is this: China is now too powerful to confront directly in military terms. So the strategy shifts toward a long-term economic war, designed to constrain China's rise from the inside. This strategy rests on two pillars, which Ben and Danny call Fortress America. The first pillar revives an old doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine. The objective is simple: reassert overwhelming U.S. dominance across the Americas. That means pushing competitors, especially China, out of the region, aligning regional governments with U.S. strategic priorities, and moving supply chains from Asia into Latin America through nearshoring. Securing control over strategic natural resources across the hemisphere. The logic is straightforward. Secure the home base first, then fight the global economic war. Once the hemisphere is locked down, Pillar 2 begins. A no-holds-barred economic campaign to slow, and ultimately stop, China's rise. And the motivation is unmistakable. The world's economic center of gravity has already shifted. The Asia-Pacific region, with China at its core, now represents a larger share of global output than the G7 combined. The toolkit for this economic war includes breaking dependence on Chinese supply chains, weaponizing the US dollar, restricting access to critical technologies, pressuring allies to choose sides. This isn't globalization as we once knew it. It's managed fragmentation. And this is where everything comes together. The same cronyism that protects insiders at home is mirrored abroad. Through state power, opening new markets and securing resources for those same corporations. The system that favors asset owners domestically is echoed in a foreign policy designed to protect and expand asset ownership globally. Which leaves us with an uncomfortable final question. Is this grand strategy meant to heal the economic pain felt by younger Americans? Or is it a parallel project, one that distracts from the internal crisis and may even deepen it? That's the question worth sitting with, because how a country wages its wars abroad often tells you exactly who it has decided to protect at home. Happy new thinking.